I worked as an anonymous waitress for 3 years, until the local boss leaned close to my ear and whispered the name I had tried to bury. For 6 months, I buried my past behind the counter of the Golden Stag bar, believing no one could ever find me. The man who ruled this town, Klaus, saw me as weak prey. But that night, when he tore my shirt open in front of everyone to humiliate me, he made a fatal mistake. He did not find fear. He found a black raven scar, a brand he knew better than anyone. And in his eyes, I no longer saw arrogance, but the pure terror of a deserter who had just come face to face with a ghost he thought was long buried. My name is Anja. In this remote town, I am just Anja, the waitress at the Golden Stag bar. My job is to wipe glasses, pour beer, and clean up. That is all. I wipe each glass, one by one. The motion of my hands is steady, repetitive. I focus on the smoothness of the glass, on the small sounds of the bar, the chatter of a few regulars, the clinking of ice against a glass. These sounds mean peace. Herr Müller, the owner, stands behind the bar. He is an older man with silver hair and kind eyes. He looks at me, then smiles. He gave me this job when I had nothing. The silence between us is an agreement. He does not ask about my past, and I work to protect his peace. The door swings open, letting in a gust of cold wind. Klaus walks in. Right behind him is Lucas. The atmosphere in the bar changes instantly. Conversations trail off into silence. Klaus is large, with broad shoulders, and he moves as if every space belongs to him. He rules this town with his fists and with fear. His gang calls themselves the Wolves. Following him is Lucas, his second in command. Lucas is different. He is quiet, and his eyes never stop observing. While Klaus growls to assert his power, Lucas simply waits in silence. To me, men like Lucas are the truly dangerous ones. I set the glass down, my hands resting loosely below the counter. I do not look at them directly, but I watch their every move in the reflection of the bottles behind me. My body remains still. My breathing is even. But my muscles are ready. They sit at a corner table. Herr Müller approaches, placing 2 beers on their table. Klaus does not say thank you, just gives a curt nod and takes a long drink. My eyes automatically glance towards the window. The street outside is empty. No other threats. I return to my work, pick up another glass, wipe it. The movements must be steady, must look normal. My fingers unconsciously touch my right shoulder, over the fabric of my long-sleeved shirt. The cloth cannot hide the feeling of it. The scar. It reminds me of men like Klaus, and of the person I once was. Anja, the waitress is just a mask. I know that, and men like Klaus are the kind who can shatter it at any moment. The sound of an empty beer mug slamming down on the wooden table cuts through the false silence. All eyes dart towards Klaus, then immediately look away. Fear is contagious. He stands up. His massive frame blocks the light, casting a long shadow across the floor. He strides toward the bar, where Herr Müller and I are standing. Lucas remains seated at the table, his hands on his lap, but I know his eyes have not left us for a second. He is like a predator waiting for the command to strike. I do not step back. I just stand still, my hands under the counter, out of his sight. My body automatically enters a state of readiness, heels slightly lifted, weight balanced evenly on both feet, ready to move, ready to react. The money. Klaus stops in front of Herr Müller. He does not speak loudly, but his voice is deep and heavy, enough for everyone in the bar to hear. I see Herr Müller's hand tremble slightly as he pulls a paper envelope from a drawer below. He had it prepared. This happens every week. A ritual of humiliation. He pushes the envelope across the counter, avoiding Klaus's gaze. Klaus takes it without looking. He tears it open with his thumb, pulls out the wad of cash, and flips through it with his rough fingers. He clicks his tongue, a sound of annoyance. Getting senile in your old age, Müller? What was the number I told you? He throws the money onto the counter. A few bills flutter to the floor. Business has been slow, Klaus. You know how at Island. Herr Müller's voice trails off, almost a whisper. Slow? Klaus scoffs. A smile that does not reach his eyes. You run the only bar in this godforsaken town. People come in every night and you tell me business is slow? He reaches out and slaps the old man's cheek, again and again. It is not a friendly gesture. The force is strong enough to make his head rock with each slap. Do not make me repeat myself. I do not like repeating myself. My hands clench under the counter. My knuckles turn white. I feel a familiar heat run up my spine. I hate this feeling. It is a part of the old me, a person I tried to kill and bury. I take a deep, slow breath, trying to push it back down. You are Anja. You are a waitress, I tell myself. Herr Müller just bows his head. His shoulders slumped. He says nothing more. His silence seems to be a challenge to Klaus. He needs fear, needs begging, to feel powerful. The old man's silence robs him of that. Let me make you understand, Klaus says, his voice suddenly, falsely sweet. His hand swings up. A sharp, cruel crack echoes through the bar. It is louder than the sound of the beer mug. Herr Müller's head is knocked to the side. He stumbles, loses his balance, and falls into the neatly stacked rows of glasses behind him. The sound of shattering glass. Sharp, piercing, everything inside me stops. The silence I had tried to maintain in my mind. The wall I had built for years with tedious chores and empty days collapses in a single second. The heat is no longer smoldering. It erupts into a cold flame, racing through my veins, sharpening my senses. I am no longer thinking. I am just acting. I step out from behind the bar. My footsteps make no sound. I go to Herr Müller, kneeling beside him amidst the broken shards. Are you all right? My voice is steady, devoid of emotion. Blood trickles from a small cut on his forehead. I help him sit up, leaning him against the counter. Then I slowly stand. I turn around. I look directly into Klaus's eyes. For the first time since coming here, I let what I always hide surface in my gaze. Emptiness. A deadly focus. I do not look at Lucas, but I feel his attention on me. Out of the corner of my eye, I see him narrow his eyes slightly. He has recognized it. A predator always recognizes another predator, but Klaus, in his arrogance, does not. He only sees a little waitress staring him down. A foolish act of defiance. What do you want? He growls, puffing out his chest. The mask is shattered like the glasses on the floor. Anja, the waitress, is no longer here. The person standing before Klaus now has no name. It only has a purpose. Herr Müller's silence seemed to be the final straw. Klaus needed submission, and the old man's quiet defiance was something he could not tolerate. Let me make you understand, Klaus said, his voice suddenly taking on a deceptively sweet tone. The kind bullies use right before they strike. His hand swung up. It moved too fast. A blur in the air. A dry, brutal crack echoed through the bar. It was louder than the sound of the beer mug. The sound of flesh hitting flesh. Herr Müller's head was knocked to one side. The old man staggered, losing his balance. He fell backward into the neatly arranged rows of glasses on the shelf behind him. The sound of shattering glass. Sharp. Piercing. In that moment, everything inside me stopped. The silence I had tried to maintain in my head, the wall I had built over years of mundane tasks and meaningless days, came crashing down. The heat I had suppressed was no longer a dull ember. It erupted into a cold fire, racing through my veins, sharpening my senses. My breathing was still even, but something had changed. The mask was shattered, just like the glasses on the floor. I was not thinking. I was only acting. I stepped out from behind the bar, my footsteps silent on the wooden floor. I walked over to Herr Müller, kneeling amidst the shards of glass that glittered in the yellow light. "Are you all right?" My voice was level, completely devoid of emotion. Blood was trickling from a small cut on his forehead. I helped him sit up, leaning his back against the bar. Then I slowly stood up. I turned to face Klaus. I looked him directly in the eye. I stopped trying to hide it. I allowed the thing I had always suppressed to rise to the surface of my gaze. Emptiness. A lethal focus. My old self. I did not look at Lucas, but I felt his attention on me like a physical weight. From the corner of my eye, I saw him narrow his eyes, his body leaning slightly forward. He recognized it. A predator always recognizes another predator. But Klaus, in his arrogance, did not. He only saw a little waitress glaring at him. A foolish act of defiance. "What do you want?" he snarled, puffing out his chest, ready for another display of dominance. He did not know he was no longer talking to Anja, the waitress. He was facing a raven. A contemptuous sneer appeared on Klaus's face. He looked at me like an insect that had dared to crawl onto his boot. A kitten showing its claws? He lunged at me. He was big, but slow. Every move was telegraphed by the tensing of his shoulder muscles and a furrow of his brow. A right hook. Too wide. Too predictable. It was the punch of a man used to solving everything with brute force, not a fighter. I did not retreat. I pivoted. My right heel was my anchor. My entire body shifted to the left, just enough. His arm sliced through the air where I had just been standing, carrying a faint breeze with it. His momentum carried him forward. He was off balance for 1/10 of a second. That was enough. My left hand caught his swinging wrist. My right hand secured his elbow. The worn leather of his jacket was rough under my fingers. A reverse pivot. Using his own weight against him. A small crack from his shoulder joint. He let out a grunt of pain more than anger. The pain made him instinctively double over, creating an opening right in front of me. My elbow struck the soft spot just below his sternum. The solar plexus. A point that can steal all the air from the lungs. The force did not need to be great, just precise. Air escaped his lungs in a choked gasp. He crumpled to the floor. He clutched his stomach, his mouth open, trying to breathe but unable to. His face turned red, then pale. The bar was dead silent. The only sounds were Klaus's ragged, hitching breaths and the soft crunch of broken glass under my shoes. I straightened up, taking a step back. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No fear. Just a cold stillness. My body had done what it was trained to do. That was all. I looked at the regulars. They stared at me, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and a little fear. I looked at Herr Müller, who was using the bar to pull himself up, his face stunned. I looked at Klaus's men. The confidence on their faces was gone, replaced by confusion. They did not know what to do. Finally, I looked at Lucas. He was no longer sitting. He had stood up at some point. His expression was not just one of shock. There was something else in it. Recognition. As if he was not just seeing a waitress who had taken down his boss. He was seeing a ghost. The humiliation stung more than the elbow strike. I saw it in Klaus's eyes as he struggled to get up. His breath was still ragged, but his eyes were bloodshot. He was no longer the ruler. He was just a man who had been shamed in front of a crowd and his own men. That made him more dangerous. He roared like a wounded animal. A senseless roar, filled only with primal rage. He was not using skill anymore. Skill requires composure. He had lost it. Now, there was only brute force. He lunged at me again. Not to strike, but to grab, to tear apart. This time I did not dodge completely. It was a mistake. Or perhaps it was unavoidable. His rough hands grabbed the collar of my shirt on both sides. He used his full weight to pull. Remp. The sound of tearing fabric was deafening in the silence. It cut through everything. I felt a rush of cold air on my right shoulder. The long-sleeved shirt, my cover, was torn open. Time seemed to slow down. Every eye in the bar was no longer on my face. They were fixed on a single point, my right shoulder. The thing I had hidden for all these years. The reason I always wore long sleeves. Under the yellow light of the golden stag, it was revealed. Black. Fierce. A black raven with its wings spread wide, permanently carved into my flesh. It was not a tattoo. It was a scar. A brand made with heated iron. I did not look at the scar. I looked at the people looking at it. I looked at Lucas. His mouth was open. His face was as white as a sheet. He took a step back, an involuntary reflex of fear and disbelief. Then I looked at Klaus. He was still clutching the two torn pieces of my shirt. But his hands were trembling. The rage on his face was gone. Completely gone. Replaced by something else. Pure terror. As if he had just seen someone rise from the grave. His eyes were glued to the scar. His lips moved, trying to form words, but no sound came out. "No," he stammered, his voice cracking. "No. It cannot be." The terror in Klaus's eyes lasted for a few seconds before he tried to suppress it. He let go of my torn shirt, stumbling back as if he had touched fire. He tried to reclaim his arrogant demeanor, but his voice betrayed him. "A broken-winged crow," he said. His voice strained, attempting to sound tough but unable to hide the tremor. "I thought they had wiped out all you ghosts." He was trying to belittle me, to turn me into a relic of the past. He wanted his men to believe I was not a threat, but I was no longer on the defensive. I stood up straight. The torn shirt no longer mattered. The scar on my shoulder was no longer something to hide. Tonight, it was my weapon. "You still remember this brand, don't you, Klaus?" My voice was as cold as ice, cutting through the silence in the bar. Every other sound had ceased. I did not need to look at my shoulder. Instead, I raised my index finger and pointed directly at his chest. He wore a leather jacket, but I knew what lay beneath it. He knew it too. "The brand you once wore with pride on your own chest," I said, enunciating every word. His eyes twitched. I lowered my voice, but it was loud enough for all of his wolves to hear. "But your brand, it has a line through it, doesn't it?" The air in the bar grew thick. I saw Lucas freeze. I continued, giving him no chance to respond. "The mark of a traitor. The mark of one who sold out his own unit to run away." Those words were not just for Klaus. They were for Lucas. They were for the men who called themselves the Wolves, who followed him because they believed in his image of strength. And it worked. Their eyes, one by one, left me and turned to Klaus. It was no longer with obedience, no longer with fear. In their eyes now was doubt, scrutiny. The alpha wolf image that Klaus had painstakingly built with fear and bluster had just crumbled before everyone's eyes. They no longer saw him as a leader. They saw him as a lie. My words had hit their mark. Klaus's face contorted. Not with anger. This time it was pure panic. He looked at his men, searching for support, for some lingering loyalty, but he received nothing but strange, scrutinizing glances. He was a cornered animal, and a cornered animal knows only one way out: to bite. His hand fumbled inside his jacket. A dagger blade glinted in the yellow light of the bar. My body tensed, ready for the next move. I had calculated the distance, the angle. He would not touch me, but he never got the chance. A shadow moved. Lucas had made his move. Not a single wasted motion. He took one long step. A kick. Fast and precise. The toe of his boot slammed into Klaus's wrist just as the dagger was fully drawn. The knife flew, spinning through the air before landing on the wooden floor with a dry clatter. Sliding to a stop in a dark corner, Klaus stared at his empty hand. then looked up at Lucas in disbelief. This betrayal stung more than my revelation. Lucas did not look at me. He looked directly into the eyes of the man he once called leader. His voice was a low growl, each word filled with contempt. "We follow a wolf, not a treacherous rat." That sentence was the final verdict. None of the wolves spoke. They just stood there, motionless. But I saw the shift in their eyes. The blind loyalty was gone, replaced by disgust. Their silence was an absolute agreement. Klaus's reign, built on fear, ended in that moment. Not with a fight, but with a sentence. He stood there alone, surrounded by the very men who had once followed him. He was no longer the alpha wolf. He was just Klaus, a coward who had been exposed. A few days have passed. The Golden Stag bar is very different during the day. Sunlight streams through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The concealing, dim yellow light of the night is gone. Everything is bright and real. The atmosphere is different too. Soft music plays from an old radio. The sound of people talking, laughing. The tension has vanished. It has been replaced by a sense of relief that fills the room. Herr Müller stands behind the counter, humming along to the music. The cut on his forehead has scabbed over, and his smile is brighter than ever. He sees me looking and winks. I nod, a faint smile touching my lips. Today, I am wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt. The black raven scar is exposed on my right shoulder. When I reach up to grab a glass, it moves with my muscles. A few new customers have glanced at it, curious, but they quickly look away. It is no longer a guilty secret. It is no longer a chain. It is just a part of my skin, a part of my story. The bell on the door jingles. Lucas walks in. He is no longer wearing the leather jacket of the wolves. Instead, he wears a simple shirt. The thuggish, sullen demeanor is gone. He looks a bit lost, uncertain. He does not sit at his old table. He walks straight to the bar and sits on a stool across from me. "A glass of water," he says. I take a clean glass, fill it with water, and push it toward him. He takes a sip. He stares at the glass for a long moment before speaking again. "Klaus, and the others. We told the police everything. About all of it." I just listen silently and nod. "Good." He looks up at me. His gaze is no longer the scrutinizing look of an enemy. There is something else there. Respect. Maybe even gratitude. He knows what I could have done that night but did not. He finishes his water, places money on the counter, and stands up. "Thank you," he says, then turns and walks out of the bar. I watch his back as he leaves. There is no forgiveness between us, because there is nothing to forgive. We are two people who walked out of the same dark past, and now we each have to find our own way in the light. Night falls. The last customers have gone home. Herr Müller has also gone upstairs to rest, leaving me with the final cleanup. The bar returns to its usual quiet, but this silence is different. It is no longer heavy with nameless fears. It is light and peaceful. I stand alone behind the bar. The yellow light is as warm as ever. I wipe the last glass and place it on the rack. Everything is clean, in its place. I look up at my reflection in the large mirror behind the bar, amidst the rows of sparkling liquor bottles. Anja, the waitress. But now, I see more than that. My hand rises, my fingers gently touching the black raven scar on my right shoulder. The rough skin under my fingertips no longer brings pain or shame. It is just a part of me, like the color of my eyes or the shape of my hands. A light, serene smile appears on my lips for the first time. Genuine and true. Not forced. Not hidden. Just a smile. It was once a mark of servitude, my shackles. But that night, it became the key to my freedom. Sometimes, you cannot run from your past. You have to face it and turn your scars into strength. I stand there, steady, in the Golden Stag bar. This is not just a workplace. This is the place I chose to stop, the place I fought to protect. This is home. Finally, I have truly found my way home.